12th Treatise. Translated, with introductory essays, comments, and notes by Hsueh-li Cheng, 1982. 7. Being or non-being. This chapter discusses four characteristics, namely, origination, duration, change and destruction. Being in this context refers to origination and duration, and non-being refers to change and destruction. Nagarjuna argues that these four characteristics cannot be established. He also wants to assert that the teachings given by the Buddha cannot be grasped by an interplay of concepts, such as being and non-being or existence and non-existence.
Again, all things are empty. Why? Being and non-being are neither obtainable at the same time nor at different times. As it is written, there cannot be being with non-being, nor can there be being without non-being. If there can be being with non-being, then being should always be non-being. Being and non-being are contradictory to each other in nature. One thing cannot include both of them. For example, when there is life there is no death. When there is death there is no life. This has been discussed in the middle treatise. You may say that there is no mistake, in the view that, being exists without non-being. But this is not the case. Why? How can there be being without non-being? As pointed out previously, when something is produced the seven phenomena are produced together. As stated in the Abhidharma, being and impermanence are produced together. Impermanence is the characteristic of destruction and hence is called impermanence. Therefore, without non-being, and its characteristic, impermanence, being cannot be produced. If being can be produced with impermanence, then being would always be non-being. If being is always non-being, duration cannot be originated, because permanence is destroyed. But in fact there is duration. Therefore being is not always non-being. And to say, that being can be produced without impermanence cannot be true either. Why? Without impermanence being really cannot be produced.
Question: when being is produced, impermanence is already included in it and yet does not go into action. When there is destruction, impermanence goes into action and being is destroyed. Thus, origination, duration, destruction and decay have to wait for their time to go into action. At the beginning of production, origination is effective and hence being is originated. Between origination and destruction, duration is effective and hence being is upheld. At the end, impermanence is effective and hence being is destroyed. Decay is a change from origination to duration and from duration to destruction. Impermanence destroys permanence and this makes the four phenomena possible. Therefore, although a thing is produced with impermanence, being is not always non-being.
Answer: you say that impermanence is also the characteristic of destruction and is produced with being. Then at the time of being produced, being is being destroyed, and at the time of being destroyed, being is being produced. Again, there cannot be production and destruction. Why? At the time of being destroyed, there cannot be production. And at the time of being produced, there cannot be destruction, for production and destruction are contradictory. Again, you say that impermanence and duration are produced together. But, at the time of destruction, there cannot be duration, and at the time of duration there cannot be destruction. Why? Because duration and destruction are contradictory. At the time of decay, there is no duration, and at the time of duration there is no decay. Therefore, your thesis that impermanence is originally with origination, duration, destruction and decay is absurd. Why? Suppose that being is produced with impermanence. Impermanence is the characteristic of destruction. When a thing is produced it has no characteristic of destruction and when it exists it has no characteristic of destruction either. When, then, can there be impermanence?
Because of being conscious, there can be consciousness. Without being conscious there can be no characteristic of consciousness. Because of being able to sense, there can be sensation. Without being able to sense, there can be no characteristic of sensation. Memory can be called such because of being able to remember. There can be no characteristic of memory without being able to remember. Origination is a characteristic of production, non-origination is not a characteristic of production. Endurance is a characteristic of duration, non-endurance is not a characteristic of duration. Change is a characteristic of decay, no change is not a characteristic of decay. Destruction of life is a characteristic of death, no destruction of life is not a characteristic of death. Thus, destruction is a characteristic of impermanence. Without destruction there is no characteristic of impermanence.
Comment: Nagarjuna refutes the opponent's argument by pointing out that whatever can be conceived to exist must, in principle, be cognizable, observable or verifiable. Nothing can be said to exist if there is no distinguishing mark or sign by which we know of its existence. So the idea of the existence of impermanence is unintelligible if it does not have any distinguishing mark or characteristic which is capable of being perceived. One should not say that origination and impermanence are produced together at the same time, since at the time of origination nothing is capable of being observed as impermanence. Suppose that although there is impermanence, it does not destroy being at the time of origination and duration, but it will later. Why are they produced together? It is only at the time when being is destroyed that impermanence is needed. So it is incorrect to say that impermanence is produced together with being and later destroys it.
Thus the unity of being and non-being cannot be established, nor can their disunity. Therefore, being and non-being are empty. Since being and non-being are empty, all created things are empty. Since all created things are empty, non-created things are empty. Since created and non-created things are empty, all sentient beings are also empty.